The official start of the Tet Offensive came at 01:30 on the morning of 31 January, when a 14-man platoon from the Viet Cong C-10 Sapper Battalion attacked the Saigon Presidential Palace. 45 minutes later, a 19-man platoon from the same battalion attacked the U.S. Embassy. American objectives, both local and geopolitical, were clear from the start: the security of an independent Vietnamese state in the south, and with it an end to the general communist aggression in the Southeast Asia, known as containment. North Vietnamese forces launched a surprise attack dubbed the Tet Offensive, and it was the turning point that drove the two forces into conflict during the celebration of the Lunar Year, Tet. Stemming from the National Liberation Front (NLF) desire to unify Vietnam as a whole under communism, opposed by the Army of Republic of Vietnam (ARVN), backed by the United States military. The primary communist objectives during the 1968 Tet Offensive were the South Vietnamese capital of Saigon and the major U.S. and Army of Republic of Vietnam bases in nearby Long Binh and Binh Hao. While Saigon was the main focus, a number of diversions were carried out at numerous cities, military, and political facilities throughout the country, attempting to distract and spread the U.S. forces across the country to achieve a fatal blow, not only militarily, but with U.S. popular opinion as well. The offensive was crushed in a span of just under 3 months, with the fighting in Saigon lasting about a month. Hue City was freed by the end of February, and Khe Sanh was liberated by the end of April. Vietnamese casualties may have been as high as 40,000, while U.S. and South Vietnamese combined losses numbered at about 3,500. Almost 12,500 civilians were killed, with hundreds of thousands more forced to flee their homes. Ultimately, the communist forces had misjudged, and their offensive failed to spark a nationwide uprising, quickly finding out they were unable to withstand the American and South Vietnamese military. Unfortunately, the Tet Offensive had influential implications regarding public opinion and official policy in the U.S. As the Tet Offensive fizzled out, a chief political officer of the North Vietnamese defected, and victory over the conflict seemed imminent. In the wake of a seemingly easy U.S. and Allied victory, they failed to capitalize on the communist disarray and instead halted the advancement of forces and began a radical retrenchment. However, at home, the media was broadcasting a different picture that changed the course of the conflict for three main reasons. First, the electronic age ensured that killing would be televised instantaneously. Few American military leaders who allowed free rein of television reporters and photojournalists realized the ramifications of this media revolution. Second, Vietnam was conducted during the greatest period of cultural and political upheaval in American history. Civil rights, women's liberation, rock music, drugs, and the sexual revolution ensured that the war would serve as a general catalyst for anti-establishment activity of all sorts and as a rallying point for the wide variety of dissidents. Third, America in the early 1960s, at a peak of economic prosperity, had achieved a general level of affluence never before witnessed by any civilization. The result was literally millions of dissident American students, intellectuals, journalists, who now had the time and freedom to travel and the money to expend energy in protest and general activism. Although the typical soldier didn't know why he was in Vietnam, morale was generally good during the early part of the war. Morale started to shift as public opinion headed towards more anti-war sentiment at the end of the Tet Offensive. Opposing the war was one thing, but many Americans, most particularly many in the anti-war movement, committed the terrible error of focusing their anger and frustration on the soldiers fighting the war. As word of the disgraceful treatment of returning soldiers filtered back to the battlefield, the soldiers in the jungles and the rice paddies came to believe that they had been betrayed by the very people who had sent them to Vietnam in the first place. Morale began to fall apart, and with it, discipline and combat effectiveness.